her car. None of it made sense. Over the weekend, the investigation intensified. Tom and Hayes interviewed everyone in Cedar Falls who'd had contact with Sarah. They learned that she'd seemed more anxious in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The barista at the local coffee shop, a young woman named Emma, said Sarah had asked her a few weeks earlier if she'd noticed anyone unfamiliar hanging around town. Emma had thought it was an odd question, but hadn't seen anyone suspicious. The owner of the hardware store, a guy named Dave, mentioned that Sarah had bought new locks for her doors about 3 weeks before she vanished. She'd said the old ones were sticking, but Dave remembered thinking she'd seemed nervous when she bought them, kept looking over her shoulder. These details painted a picture. Sarah had known someone was getting close. She'd been preparing. But then something had happened on Monday, October 14th, and she'd vanished. On Sunday afternoon, they got a break. Marcus, the deputy, had been going through Sarah's house more carefully, looking for anything they might have missed. In the office, in the back of a desk drawer, he found a flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book. Tom and Hayes immediately knew what it was. This was Jennifer's insurance policy. Her evidence against Richard Ashford. They took it back to the station and opened it on a computer. It was everything Hayes had hoped for. Spreadsheets, emails, scanned documents, all meticulously organized. This was proof of the embezzlement scheme, and it implicated not just Ashford but several other executives at Westbridge Capital. This evidence was worth millions of dollars, and more importantly, it was worth decades of prison time for the people involved. The discovery of the flash drive confirmed what Hayes had feared. Someone had definitely come for Jennifer. And whoever it was, they hadn't found what they were looking for. If they had, the flash drive wouldn't still be hidden in her desk. This meant Jennifer might still be alive. She was valuable now, not just as a witness they wanted to silence, but as someone who knew where the evidence was. On Monday morning, a week after Sarah had disappeared, Tom got a call that changed everything. A hiker had found something in the woods about 15 miles outside of Cedar Falls. It was a woman's shoe, a brown leather ankle boot. Alex confirmed it looked like the kind Sarah wore. They organized a search of the area immediately. About 40 volunteers, plus Tom's small team and Detective Hayes, spread out through the woods. It was dense forest, mostly pine trees and thick underbrush. They searched for hours. And then, around 3 in the afternoon, one of the volunteers shouted. They'd found something. It was a small cabin, old and run down, hidden deep in the woods. The door was padlocked from the outside. Tom approached carefully. He called out, asking if anyone was inside. For a moment, there was only silence. Then they heard it. A faint sound. Someone was in there. Tom cut the padlock with bolt cutters. He pulled the door open slowly, not knowing what he'd find. The cabin was dark, lit only by the light coming through the open door. And there, in the corner, was Sarah Mitchell. She was alive. She was sitting on the floor, her hands bound with zip ties, her mouth covered with duct tape. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her face was bruised, but her eyes when she saw Tom, filled with relief and tears. Tom rushed in and carefully removed the tape from her mouth. She gasped for air and started crying. They got her out of the cabin. The paramedics checked her over. She was dehydrated, exhausted, and clearly traumatized, but physically she was going to be okay. She'd been held in that cabin for nearly a week. Tom wanted to get her to the hospital immediately, but Hayes needed to ask her some questions. Who had done this? Who had taken her? Sarah, still shaking, told them the story. On Monday night, October 14th, she'd been getting ready for bed when she'd heard a noise at her back door. Before she could react, 2 men had broken in. They'd grabbed her, put a cloth over her mouth. She'd struggled, but one of them had hit her, and everything had gone dark. When she'd woken up, she was in the cabin. The men had kept her there, demanding to know where the evidence was. She'd refused to tell them. They'd threatened her, hurt her, but she'd held out. She'd known that the moment she told them where the flash drive was, she'd be worthless to them. She'd be dead. Tom asked if she'd recognized the men. She shook her head. They'd worn masks most of the time, but she'd heard them talking. One of them had an accent, maybe Eastern European. The other had called him Dmitri at one point, and she'd heard them on the phone with someone they called the boss. They'd said the boss was getting impatient, wanted results. Hayes knew immediately that this went beyond Richard Ashford. Ashford had connections, sure, but hiring people to kidnap someone? That was organized crime level. The embezzlement at Westbridge Capital must have been connected to something bigger, something darker. They took Sarah to the hospital in the nearest city, about an hour away, under police protection. Hayes contacted the FBI. This was now a federal case. Kidnapping, organized crime, financial fraud. The FBI took over the investigation, but Hayes stayed involved. He felt responsible for Sarah. He'd told her to come forward, and when she'd gotten scared, he hadn't protected her well enough. Over the next few days, the full story came out. The FBI tracked down the 2 men who'd kidnapped Sarah. Dmitry Volkov and his partner, a man named Carl Stevens. They were hired muscle, working for a larger criminal organization that had been laundering money through Westbridge Capital. Richard Ashford hadn't just been embezzling. He'd been helping a Russian organized crime group clean their money, and he'd been skimming off the top for himself. When Jennifer Hartley had discovered the fraud, she'd unknowingly stumbled onto something much bigger than corporate embezzlement. She'd found evidence of international money laundering, connections to drug trafficking, arms deals, all of it flowing through Westbridge Capital. The people behind this operation couldn't let her expose them. Ashford had given them Jennifer's information, told them she was dangerous. When she disappeared, they'd spent months trying to find her. And eventually, they had. They'd sent Volkov and Stevens to grab her and get the evidence. But Sarah had been smart. Even under torture, she'd protected that flash drive. The FBI arrested over 20 people connected to the case. Richard Ashford was charged with embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. He's currently serving a 35-year sentence. Volkov and Stevens both took plea deals and testified against their bosses. They're in prison too. As for Sarah, or Jennifer, she entered witness protection. She testified at all the trials, and her evidence was crucial in securing convictions. The last Alex heard, she's living somewhere on the East Coast under yet another new name. The FBI promised her she'd be safe this time, that they'd learned from their mistakes. Alex said the hardest part was saying goodbye. Sarah had become a friend, even if Alex hadn't really known who she was. Before she left Cedar Falls for the last time, she'd stopped by to see Alex at the library. She'd thanked them for caring enough to check on her when she disappeared. She'd said that if Alex hadn't called the police when they did, she might not have survived. The empty house on Maple Street stood vacant for months. Eventually, a young couple bought it and moved in. They have no idea what happened there, and the people of Cedar Falls have mostly moved on. But Alex says they think about Sarah sometimes. They wonder if she's happy, if she's safe, if she ever found the peace she'd been looking for when she first came to Cedar Falls. The truth is, nobody really knows what happened to Jennifer Hartley after she entered witness protection. That's the point of witness protection. But Alex likes to imagine that somewhere, in some quiet town, there's a woman who looks a little like Sarah Mitchell, who works from home and keeps to herself, who has kind eyes that crinkle when she smiles. And Alex hopes that this time, she finally gets to live the peaceful life she deserves. This story is a reminder that sometimes the person living next door has a past you'd never imagine. That small towns aren't always as simple as they seem. And that courage sometimes means holding on to the truth, even when it costs you everything. Sarah Mitchell, whoever she really is, showed incredible bravery in the face of unimaginable danger. And even though Cedar Falls only knew her for a short time, she left an impact that the town won't soon forget. If you ever find yourself in Cedar Falls, Oregon, stop by the library on Tuesday afternoon. You might see Alex there, working at the front desk. And if you do, maybe don't ask about the house on Maple Street. Some stories are better left in the past. But know that what happened there in the fall of 2019 changed that town forever and changed the people who lived through it. It's a story about secrets, survival, and the price of doing the right thing. And it's all true.